Is your bike cranking but it won't start? Stick around to see how I fixed my Honda XR650L with a cranking no start condition. Hi, I'm Francois from AdventureBikeTour.com. We recently went on holiday, so that's why I haven't made videos in the last couple of weeks. The bike stood for 2 or 3 weeks, and when I came back I started the bike and it would crank fine but it wouldn't start. So initially I thought it was because I left the fuel petcock in the on position. I usually close it and I left it open for 2 weeks. So I tried full throttle to clear the fuel. That didn't work, and eventually I drained the battery. So by that stage I was fairly confident that it wasn't a fuel issue, but I couldn't know for sure. So I charged the battery, and I remember last time it had a crank no start condition a couple of months ago. I charged the battery and it immediately started after that. So I was confident that that is the issue. Charged the battery overnight on the C-Tech. It was 12.8 volts the next morning. Popped it back in the bike. Still cranking, no starting. So it couldn't have been a fuel issue, maybe, but I checked. There was fuel in the inline fuel filter and the carburetor was cleaned out fairly recently. So it was unlikely that was a fuel issue. It was more likely a spark issue. Also, there could have been compression or air, but the air filter is fine. I cleaned that recently and I checked, it's fine, no obstructions, and the compression is fine. I rode it 2 weeks ago and it ran fine. So it's most likely a sparking issue. The best way to test this is to take out the spark plug and test for spark, but I have to admit that a no spark condition, I have a mental block against it. I always feel like if I test the spark and there's no spark, I'm going to be stumped, and so I avoid it as long as possible. So I decided I'm going to take my time, film it, and take it step by step. The problem is I'm so busy at work catching up at the moment, so I never had the energy to take out the camera and film it. So every now and again when I take a break, I would test something. So a very haphazard process. I also Google, and that is the worst thing you can do, because now you Google crank no start on Honda XR650L, and there's a whole lot of posts on CDI problem. You have to change the CDI. It's $150, or pulse generator. Now, yes, these things can fail, especially the CDI on these. The solder joints are not great. So I worried that this is my issue, and I didn't want to test further in case that was the issue and I had to spend a lot of money and wait for parts. Anyway, so that's why I left it for a day or two. And then I decided, because I read, over the holiday, I read Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance by Robert Pirsig. Now, a very small part of the book is about motorcycle maintenance, but a lot of it's about the psychology behind it. And that is my biggest issue, the mental block. So maybe you're the same. I always look up to those people who are not afraid to just jump in and do stuff. But anyway, so I was stumped. So the process that I decided to follow is, with anything that when you fix a bike, and it's a scientific method, come up with a hypothesis of what the problem might be, design a test, and then test or prove or disprove the hypothesis, and then either fix it or move on. So, for instance, it could be the kill switch. So how do we test that? Or so let's start with the spark plug. There's no spark. So hypothesis, there's no spark. Design a test, take out the spark plug, short it against the motor crank. If there's a spark, then it's not a problem. If there's no spark, then we've confirmed that there's no spark. But I didn't do this. I actually read up and found diagrams, because I wanted to test the CDI, because that is the big culprit usually. So I got a diagram of the CDI. I'll pop it on the screen if you want to take a screenshot. Pause and take a screenshot. Because it was accurate. Now there's one of the plugs there, one of the connectors has 12 volts from the battery and is wired through the key, the ignition switch, and then through the kill switch to that point on the CDI. I think it's a blue and a white wire. I can't remember, but it's on the screen. So I tested with a multimeter there, and sure, there was 12 volts there at that point there. Flipped the kill switch to the off position, 12 volts went to 0. So I confirmed that the kill switch is working, and I also confirmed that we are getting power to the CDI. So it could still be the CDI, and I'm going to admit this, I'm very embarrassed, but I did smack the CDI once just while I had it out. I don't think that was the problem. I'm pretty sure it wasn't. But anyways, that's what people always say, try that. So that is a very bad example of what to do, is do more than one thing at once, because then you don't know what the problem was. But anyways, I kept testing. I did test the clutch cutout switch. That's part of the circuit for the safety switches, the kickstand and the clutch and the neutral switch. I wanted to short out the clutch switch, but it was already short out, because if you pull in the switch, if I test at that connector there, there's continuity whether the clutch is in or out. So it's as if it's already short. So that wasn't the issue. Then while I was busy with the CD, I tested the battery again, and it read 12.0 volts. Now that is a fairly flat battery. A battery should be 12.4, but preferably 12.6 volts. And that's what it was after I charged it. It was actually a bit higher. So I tested 12.0 volts. So I thought, the battery's flat again. And I haven't cranked it much since I last charged it. So I took out the battery to replace it. I thought I found the problem, and I was quite chuffed with myself. And I thought, well, the battery is probably quite old. I got it with the bike. So at least then all my troubles are gone. So as I saw the battery on the ground, I just tested it again just to make sure, and it read 12.6 volts again. And now I'm like, what? It just read 12.0 volts in the bike. But obviously I measured on the terminals. So, I think, well, the terminals might be dirty then. I checked, they were quite a little bit dirty, not super bad. I cleaned the terminals on the battery and on the bike, on the wiring, with a piece of sandpaper, put it back on the battery, and measured 12.6 volts on the terminals. So there was definitely a bit of resistance there. I hit the starter switch, bike fired right up. So in the end, I stumbled upon it, sort of, but I was also testing certain things. So I was working the right direction. And the funny thing is, earlier that day, I decided to myself, I'm going to see this as an opportunity, a learning opportunity. I'm not going to get phased. I'm going to take my time, go through it methodically, and use this opportunity to learn everything there is to learn about the starting circuit, or the spark circuit on the XR650L. And then I stumbled off camera onto dirty battery terminals. I want to take this opportunity to thank Brian Estes for his contribution at my Buy Me a Coffee account. You can check out the link in the description or on the screen below if you want to make a contribution to filling up the tank of the Land Cruiser or the Honda XR650L for future YouTube videos. Thank you so much. I appreciate the support. So anyways, maybe that helps you, and let me know what you have found as no spark problems on the XR650L, or if you have a no spark problem, let me know, and maybe we can figure it out in the comments, or someone else can help us. But the main message here is, don't get discouraged. If you have a mental block like I do, especially with electrics, take a deep breath, see it as a learning opportunity, get yourself a multimeter, get the diagrams. Be careful of asking online, do it, but get ideas, but don't start ordering parts until you've confirmed what the issue is. And do that hypothesis and then designing of tests. Because if you can figure out in your head what it could be and then design a test, it's much easier to pinpoint the problem. But the main barrier for me was psychological rather than technical. Anyways, the same actually happened on this old thing. I've got a 97 Land Cruiser. It's a HJ45 diesel. It has featured once on this channel, and it'll probably feature a bit more. And it also had a problem of, it wouldn't even crank. It just clicked when you flicked or turned the key. And I also Googled, and they said starter relay or glow plug module or whatever, or starter motor problems, solenoids. So I started thinking of replacing parts, and I actually phoned the spare shop for a starter relay. And before I bought anything, I just tested the battery, and it was dirty terminals. I cleaned up all the junk on all the straps and the terminals, and the first turn of the key, it started right up. So don't jump to conclusions. Take it step by step. Go through the whole system. Thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you next week. hopefully.